675,000 carers and 100,000 young carers, and that is a lot of people. And that's only people who have defined themselves on the forum as having that role as a carer. Perhaps other people who work, who study, who juggle the rest of their life haven't even put down on the census forum that they are unpaid carers. And I know the stresses that caring can have on the family. It has not just on the carer themselves, but on the whole family. I'm the unpaid carer of 2 boys on the autistic spectrum. And I do what I do with kindness and compassion in my heart. And I'm proud to be part of an army of carers who contribute £10 billion of care to the Scottish economy every year. That's a lot of money and it's very high quality. But the thing is that, as the question says, we do need support. We need ongoing support, not just at time of crisis, because we know that when a situation breaks down, that the human and the economic cost is huge and high. So we need regular support through our caring journey, access to respite, access to signposting to information, finding out what's out there. And also we need an end to the postcode lottery. Some areas in Scotland are well catered for, others are not. I've been reading a memoir recently by the historian Barbara Taylor, and she writes about recovering from ill health and her journey through that and how she was supported. And she gave a really interesting definition of community care. She said community care is the work that is carried out by unpaid carers, usually by people who are very exhausted. And she says that's the way that politicians usually see people who are carers. They just expect us to go on and go on with the job, and usually we don't make a fuss. I'm really glad that yourself today have highlighted how many carers there are in Scotland and put those figures out there. But we also have to remember that in the last 3 years there have been over 3 billion cuts to services, to direct services, and that's having a huge impact on carers and those they care for. And I know the No campaign might say that if you're going to vote for yes, it's all up in the air, there's no answers to solutions. But one definite is, if you vote for no, you're voting for a vote for more austerity and more cuts. And that's why I want to vote for an independent Scotland. The most important thing is, in an independent Scotland, we're going to have a Bill of Rights. That's going to be a written Bill of Rights. At the moment, it's just like checks and balances, and that's okay. And that's the way the British state has operated for a long time. But we're going to have rights enshrined. And I really hope that carers, all 775,000 plus of us, will be able to take part in that conversation and contribute to that Bill of Rights. And that's what I'll be advocating for as part of the Yes campaign. That was a really interesting comparison between carers and veterans, and I think Commissioner will find a lot in common. I have a friend who suffered post-traumatic stress after serving a tour of duty in Iraq, and he received an army pension for that. Like carers allowance though, that is used as part of his benefits, and it's taken off his income, which is another question we'll come to later on in the conversation. A commissioner sounds good, but I don't know if you remember a few years ago, we had this, everywhere there was a czar popping up. There was a czar for school dinners, for hospital cleaning, but we never actually found out what these czars actually contributed, what findings. It's just a buzzword. What we really need is a commissioner, but someone with real powers. Yeah, they should definitely work with all the charities as well as state provision and ensure that nobody falls through the gaps. I'm also not all that fond of the term a carers champion, because I believe that a carers champion is just an excuse to take carers for granted. Carers are not just one person, there are a lot of people, and we have to listen to a lot of carers' voices. So hope if we have the carers commissioner that will happen and that a lot of voices will be heard. As I said as well though, the most important thing about an independent Scotland is the Bill of Rights. I think a commissioner with a Bill of Rights, with our rights enshrined in law, will be excellent and will really work best for carers in Scotland. I totally agree. As you just pointed out earlier on, some carers care more than 60 hours a week on top of their other duties and work. So that's less than £1 an hour. It's really shocking, and a lot of people are exempt. Under 16s who offer a lot of care, and myself who's a student, I don't qualify for carers allowance, and people who work more full time. Even though all our other work, it all has to go around our caring duties. It's such an important part of our life. Unfortunately, at the moment, some carers are already finding that their income is being cut. People with disabilities are having to go through ATOS assessments and mysteriously being cured. It's like going to Lourdes, I think, a trip to Atos. And this is especially affecting people with learning difficulties. So a lot of disabled people, when they're losing their benefits, their carers are losing access, to carers allowance, and that is carrying on at the moment. And no vote will mean this will continue. There will be continued austerity. No government, whatever their colour, is going to change that with the Westminster vote. I can't stand here and say there's going to be rainbows and sunshine every day in independent Scotland, because there's not. It's up for the people to decide what's going to happen. But there are already people who are dreaming about what an independent Scotland can be, thinking outside the box. One of these people is Ailsa Mackay. She's a lecturer from Caledonia University, and her idea is a citizen's income. This will be paid to every single person in Scotland, male and female, regardless if they work or not. People who work can work, and people who are more well off will pay off through progressive taxation. So that's the kind of thinking outside the box that's good, and will guarantee an income for all carers. This is something that's a huge concern to me and something I'm passionate about, because with information comes power, and it's so important that people get that information. Just this week I met another mum with a child with autism who didn't know about things like the family fund, very basic things that we take for granted. And I have to admit that most of the information that I have got has been through carers organisations and other carers, so it's so important. My daughter especially has been really helped by the Carer Centre in Renfrewshire, and it's so important that young people and children have access to that service, and again, all children in Scotland. It shouldn't be a postcode lottery and a huge waiting list, and there is. I also wish, right at the beginning, when my son was born with numerous disabilities, I just wish there had been someone there to take my hand. But I had the doctors looking after all the medical parts, and all these strange jargon, you enter a brand new world, and terms you don't know. I just wish at that time that there'd been a coordinator, someone who was there, who was appointed to help us, and I think that would be really important, that carers have someone who could be with them throughout their caring journey, and that this should be part of a local authority assessment, not just an add-on. I think schools and further education have a lot to do as well in this. I believe that every school should have a young carers coordination, rather than just looking at child's behaviour. Looking at reasons, why children are having difficulties, and make sure that all young carers have the best potential and the best possible start in life. Medical students now are now taught to be more empathetic about their patients, and that's a good thing. I also think they should be educated about carers' rights. It shouldn't be just one person's job to be a carer. All the professionals who deal with us should have a working knowledge, and should not feel that they have to put this off somewhere else, or at least know where they go for that help. And that's the kind of society I want for my children. I want a society where carers are empowered, and that everywhere in Scotland that it's not going to be a postcode lottery, that we all have equal rights. As you can probably tell, I've already started. I try and tell at least 10 people a day, and all my carers friends pretty well know my views, and I will try and convince other people as well. Independence is something that starts in the heart, and I think independence means a lot to carers and to the people who they care for. And it's not just a word, it's a whole vision and a way of life. And I think independence for us means taking more responsibility and having more control of our own lives, which is something that we all aspire to, especially in the times of cuts and the worries around self-directed support. Independence is not just a buzzword, it's something that should happen. And I want independence for my children, first of all, and for your children as well, and for all the people who we care about, all the people who we love. This has the potential to be a silent revolution to create a kinder, fairer society, the kind of place that I want my children to grow up to. I also want independence because I want to live in a nuclear-free Scotland. That is just another thing that makes it so important to me. And as I keep emphasising, with independence we're going to have a Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights with rights written down in law. And this is going to be a huge conversation for carers. And I hope that carers organisations, as well as speaking for carers, will continue to empower people and ensure that they themselves are part of that conversation to go on and empower people. Independence means empowerment as well for me. So I'm going to convince you to vote. My vision of a Scotland is not perhaps the SNP one of a low corporation tax. I want one where we have a rich social economy. We really care about those, everyone. A kinder, fairer society. And that's why I'm going to ask you to vote yes. Thank you very much.